Yes, Jack Grealish for me is a player who has become a monumental flop, and yet here we are in 2025, and some people are still choosing to ignore it. Lord forbid we have a conversation about Paul Pogba's legacy though, because the same people who will defend Grealish will call for Pogba's head. So you might be asking yourself if you're familiar with Grealish, there's no way that this guy on my screen right now is calling a player who has won 3 Premier League titles, is a Champions League winner, and a treble winner within the last decade, a flop with so much conviction. Well, you're absolutely right, because in my opinion, this guy is a flop. Think of Jack Grealish as that one kid in our school group projects that we just hated to have in our groups. At first, you hope this kid could actually get something done, which would end up helping everyone else as well. Sure, the kid was funny and maybe hopefully every now and then they'd contribute something small to the project, but for the majority of the time, you knew that it was down to everyone else to make sure you came out with a good grade at the end. That has been Jack Grealish over the last handful of years, but we're talking about world football, not a school group project. Grealish so far with his current move in the transfer window is slowly starting to carve out a better name for himself, so I do have to give him some credit there, but we'll get into that a little bit later in the video. First, we really need to get into why I'm so adamant in calling this guy a flop. Deep down, we all know what Grealish is good at, but once he was under that microscope and the lights were almost as bright as they could be, then things got tough for him. Grealish at one point was considered such a darling by English media, and the hype train that surrounded him felt like it could not be stopped. So I wanted to review his time at Villa and see how exactly he became such a superstar, and then examine why exactly I think he's a flop. Hey, real quick, boys, if you enjoyed the video and enjoyed the channel and the content, don't forget to leave a like, comment, subscribe. We do drop weekly football videos, so make sure you hit the notification bell as well so you don't miss an upload. And if you're not new to the channel, boys, welcome back. Glad to have you around for another video. Make sure you let me know in the comments down below if you think Jack Grealish is a flop or not. But with that being said, boys, let's get into this rise and fall of Jack Grealish. For Grealish, it would be at his boyhood club Aston Villa, where he would slowly become a sensation. Specifically, late in the 13-14 season, an 18-year-old Jack Grealish would make his debut for the senior team, as he would come on late in a 4-0 loss to Man City after spending a few years out on loan. He would earn his first actual start on August 27th, 2014 in a 1-0 EFL Cup loss to Leyton Orient. August 27th is actually my birthday, and in 2014 I was turning 15, which means the same day that Grealish got his first start for the senior team, I probably spent my birthday night playing FIFA with the boys. From here, Grealish would start to become more and more of a regular in that Aston Villa side. The type of profile that Grealish was when he was coming up felt like a unicorn because of the fact that the type of players that England were producing at the time were very different. He was a very technical player who was capable of running rings around defenders and also had a pretty good eye for a pass. He wasn't the fastest on the pitch, but his quick burst of acceleration paired with that technical ability always made him a threat. However, one thing about Grealish was that even from a young age, it was clear that he had disciplinary issues off the pitch that many people didn't even really care about. Some early ones included photos coming out of him allegedly inhaling NOS, going clubbing after a 4-0 loss away from home, and then being included in a party at a hotel that the police had to shut down. And this was all just what we knew about. Grealish would be part of the Aston Villa side that got relegated in the 15-16 season as they finished in dead last. A season where all 16 games he featured in would result in losses. I have to give him credit though, because he did stick by his boyhood club despite relegation. And I'm sure it did help that he wasn't this insane household name at the time, so it's not like offers were piling in from every direction, but nonetheless he decided to stay there, which is applaudable. And nevertheless, the 3 years that Grealish did spend with Aston Villa in the championship did help him get up to speed with being that focal point of the attack for the club. He would miss games here and there through injury, including a life-threatening ruptured kidney in 2017, but he would be as present as could be for them for the rest of the time. He could play an important role in the club making it to the championship playoff final in 2018, where they'd come up just short. The club would achieve promotion back to the Premier League during the 18-19 season, where Jack Grealish, who was made captain of the club on a temporary basis in March of 2019, would help the side make the playoff final again, but this time getting the better of Derby County. Now back in the Premier League after 3 seasons away, at 23 years old, this was Jack Grealish's chance to prove his worth and try to get Villa back to a respectable place. And given the state of that side, Grealish was the main man in that side going forward. If anything was going to happen for that Villa side, it was going to go to Grealish. And Villa that first season back would finish just outside of the relegation zone by 1 point. However, Grealish from mostly that left side that he operated would put up 10 goals and 8 assists, which all things considered was very impressive. In fact, he would also get a goal on the final match day, which earned them a point that helped them survive. Week in, week out, it was Grealish that was doing everything for Aston Villa. His ability to pick up the ball and not only drive at opposing defenders, but actually work his way around them was incredible, and off ability alone, he was on par with some of the best in the league. This season, he'd really lead the Prem in progressive carries, key passes, shot creating actions, fouls won, and multiple ball carrying metrics, which really emphasized how proof he was to anything happening in that side. He would get in trouble this season for breaking COVID protocols. But again, in the grand scheme of things, no one really ended up caring, which has just been the story of Grealish's career so far. Controversies don't matter with this guy because, like I said, he is a darling. There would be no Euros in 2020 due to the world shutting down, but many were calling for the 24-year-old to be a part of the squad next year when the time did come around. And it would be the 2021 season that really saw Grealish step into the starlight. First off, he'd help Aston Villa finish in 11th place this season as he would step up his output. But then when you start to dissect everything, it gets crazier. Grealish would be key in Villa dismantling Liverpool 7-2 as he would score twice and get 3 assists against the champions on the day. As the season went on, Grealish continued to justify all the freedom that Villa had given him as he drastically improved in so many metrics and led the league in so many different areas of the attack. It's also important to add that Grealish was more than willing to do that dirty work and also help out the team when they were in defensive positions. Very commendable stuff. Time Grealish with his long hair and short socks was officially here. Pair his brilliant performances with the 7 goals and 12 assists that he got in just 27 games because of the fact that he had an injury, and you can see how crazy this man was moving. It got to the point where his teammate Emi Martinez described him as Messi with the right foot, which goes to show how the hype train was well and truly gone from the station. But alas, Grealish had a decision to make. Following 2 great seasons with Villa, he was now a hot commodity and was sought after by the big boys in the Prem. Player with all that talent was bound to move, and it just became a question of which direction Jack would go in. Should he make the move, there's potential for this guy to become an all-timer in the Prem. And so on August 5th, 2021, Manchester City would sign Jack Grealish for a record-breaking 117 million euros, which to date makes him still the most expensive Englishman of all time and the 8th most expensive transfer of all time. And this is a move that, in my opinion, set the precedent for things to come. Firstly, it came with a huge amount of pressure for Jack Grealish. He was joining a side that was just coming off winning their 3rd league title in 4 years, and clearly there was already a pre-established quality that was expected from the players at the club. Then with Pep Guardiola steering the ship and Grealish taking the number 10 from club legend Agüero, who had just departed, he was immediately thrown into an environment where he needed to produce. But even then, secondly, because of his price tag alone, there was already an expectation that he needed to put up Messi and Ronaldo numbers as soon as possible. If he could deliver insane numbers and insane performances, then people will forget about the fee. But with an amount that high, the expectations were already set to be through the roof. It just became a question of how much better could he make this already great Manchester City side. And for 117 million, the expectation is a whole lot better. And in my opinion, no matter what you Grealish defenders might say, this was really the beginning of his flop era. For being the 8th most expensive player of all time, can we really say that Grealish specifically delivered enough to Man City to consider himself an important asset? I don't think so. Better players have been criticized for less. But I'm sure you're saying, can you please get into specifics? So let's go over those reasons as to why over these last 4 years I'd consider Grealish to be a flop at Man City. So first things first, his output never improved at City, and if anything, it just ended up getting worse as time went on. And I'm sure some of you Grealish defenders are gonna say that he was never the type of player to put up insane numbers every single year, but I feel like that's a bit of a cop-out. And we'll get into how he was performing specifically in just a second, because I know football isn't all about goals and assists and cold hard numbers, but there is an importance to this and I need you to stay with me. With that being said, in Grealish's final season for Aston Villa, where many believed he was really beginning his peak, he managed to put up the aforementioned 7 goals and 12 assists in all competitions. And mind you, Grealish, yes, was the main man in this Villa side, but he was carrying a team that really wasn't phenomenal. So now you take this attacker who moved to the best team in the country, and now with better players around him, you'd expect him to at least be able to provide the exact numbers he put up before at a bare minimum. Add to that the fact that it is not just any attacker, this is an attacker who was the most expensive Englishman of all time, again just amping up realistically what the expectation should have been. Yet not once has Grealish been able to surpass, let alone even get close to matching what he did in that final season for Villa. In his first season for the club, he'd get 6 goals and 4 assists in 39 matches. In year 2, which would be the closest he'd get to replicating it, he'd get 5 goals and 11 assists in 50 matches. Year 3, he'd put up 3 goals and 3 assists in 33 games. And in year 4, he'd get 3 goals and 5 assists in 32 matches. After just 1 season, Guardiola had to come out and say that he didn't sign Grealish for goals and assists. A load of BS if you ask me. And just to make 2 things clear. 1, yes, I am aware aware that players do not decide their own price tag. And 2, yes, I know goals and assists are not make or break for every single player in terms of what their quality is. But I'm sorry, 117 million euro player barely being able to put up 12 goals and assists in a side that is so good, led by a legendary manager that has had other players putting up crazy numbers in the past, is absolutely crazy to me. Am I the only one that thinks that? It's a sign of something, which kind of takes me to my next point, and saying that Grealish flopping in this bigger move was because of the fact that he wasn't really doing himself any favors on the pitch. Essentially, the Grealish that we saw drive Villa to survive from relegation and to 11th place was no longer the same one that we saw playing for Man City. He was still doing the defensive work, but his style of play did change a lot, which really is the other side of the coin in regards to the drop off in output. And like I said earlier, Grealish was touted for his technical ability and really his willingness to drive at defenders, weave through them, and use his creativity to make something happen. Yet with Grealish at City, he still had that good technical ability, but he was never really using it. He became a very one-dimensional player to go up against, where before he might pick up the ball from a slightly wider area and, as I mentioned, drive at a defender to create, he would now instead sort of linger on the ball before making a simple sideways or backwards pass. And mind you, this was realistically with him getting more touches of the ball because of how possessive of a side Man City is. It got to the point where people really start to clown on Grealish because of how easy it seemed to play against, and it would be disingenuous to say that he was a bum all the time. He would pop up with some decent performances here and there for Man City, but the majority of the time he really left a lot to be desired, especially considering what we had seen from him at Villa. Realistically, we could have expected Grealish to get better as time went on, as he integrated himself more into this Manchester City side, getting accustomed to playing with better players, learning off of them, playing with them, but it never really happened for the 117 million euro man. So from the cold output number perspective, Grealish flopped there because he was never able to improve. From the more eye test perspective, he also didn't get any better and regressed, which would be another massive reason to consider him a flop. And if we're being real, there's one final reason as to why Grealish never worked at Man City and flopped, and it's one that is kinda sorta out of his control. We need to be honest and just admit that Grealish never ever fit the Pep Guardiola system. Pep's system is phenomenal. We know all about the guy. He's won so many trophies. He won, like I said, 3 out of 4 Premier League titles at the point that Grealish had joined them. They're coming off of 4P even now, but in regards to Jack Grealish specifically, this was just not for him. It's too controlling of the attacking players because of the fact that it needs him to repeat the same playing cycles over and over, and it's really the antithesis of what we saw from Jack Grealish at Aston Villa that allowed him to flourish. Really, from day one, he was more or less doomed to fail. At Villa, like I mentioned, he had the freedom to do things the way he thought was best. Essentially, think of him as that more traditional, creative type of player, taking out the ball, driving, making things happen without the coach berating instructions at him. But unfortunately, Pep wanted more rigidity from his players, and Grealish bought into the system because it was a winning one. In turn, he regressed both on the pitch and from a number standpoint, despite the fact that he was winning so many trophies because he was part of the squad. Many people still continue to call Grealish a maverick even to this day, and it is still very true. When he's given the opportunity to really be free and operate to his liking, you can see the difference. But at the same time, he should have known what he was walking into. Like I said, by the time he was blowing up in that Aston Villa team in 2021, a lot of teams were after him. United, Arsenal, Liverpool, all these big teams in the Prem, but he decided to go to the one with really the most rigid, systematic style of play. But you can't blame him because at the end of the day, he has all these trophies tied to him. He did help them win that treble with like a run of a couple good games, but overall as a whole, we have to consider Grealish's time at Manchester City a flop. But alas, like I kind of alluded to earlier, it's not all doom and gloom for him. The 29-year-old has just moved to Everton on loan, where he's really reviving his career. In just 4 games for the Toffees, he has 4 assists, and he is really thriving in that more maverick free role that he has at the club. It's going to be great to see if he can carry on this form, but for me, Jack Grealish, the 8th most expensive player of all time, will always be the guy that flopped at Manchester City.